Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Anton, and welcome to today's video for Backpack Battles. What are we doing today? Well, we've recently had a balance patch, and so I want to talk about it. Sadly, no new items, so just balance changes, but they are very, very much needed balance changes in my opinion. So let's get right into it. So, time for more adjustments. This week, the biggest outlier was Cold Pyromancer. So there will be some nerfs. And if you don't keep track of like high ranks and play rates and win rates, Cold Pyromancer, or Cryomancer, as most people call it, Cryomancer was dominating. Cryomancer had insanely high pick rates and insanely high win rates. It was absolutely nuts. Reason for that is, in my opinion, a couple of reasons. One, Pyromancer in general is just a strong class. It has a very good early game. Chili Pepper's great. Molten Spear is great. Easy access to Burning Torch is great. Fire Pit is a pretty strong starting bag. Molten Dagger is also pretty good too. And alongside, like, it happened a long time ago, but getting a guaranteed cryo item from your first shop after you buy the Frozen Flame is also pretty good. But that was a long time ago. Also, on top of that, it's kind of just hard to interact with cold in general, so all in all, Cryo's been really good. Where was I? We will, of course, monitor the strength of the class and make sure to correct if the adjustments went too far or not far enough. If all goes according to plan, the beta branch will come up again next Friday with new content. Stay tuned for more info. That's going to be great. Love when they drop new items. Also great for content creation. So, enough rambling. Let's get into the actual changes because there's quite a few. So, what do we have here for neutral stuff? First off, lots of armor changes. Corrupted Armor, Moon Armor, and Holy Armor are all faster by 0.2 seconds. I don't understand this. I do not really understand this buff. These items never to me felt weak. I kind of can see them thinking like maybe most people don't think they're worth the cost, and I do kind of agree with that, especially if we compare them to especially the Corrupted Armor and Moon Armor compared to Sun Armor, the Pyromancer Golden Armor evolution. They very much are not worth it if we compare them to Sun Armor. Sun Armor is kind of nuts in all honesty. Holy Armor though, honestly, that buff, it's obviously a buff, but most of the time, Holy Armor, in my opinion, that poison cleanse thing it doesn't really matter. Corrupted Armor and Moon Armor, though, were already pretty solid, but I do like the buffs to them. So, I'm a fan. I am a fan. I just kind of wish they had buffed other things that were a little weaker, but there's a lot of buffs here. Next up, Potion Belt buff. Cleanses one more debuff if you have 4 potions activating in it. Gonna be honest with you, I still don't really find that to be good enough to want to fit 4 potions in a potion belt rather than just like doing other like potion stacking shenanigans to get better potion stacks, more efficient potion stacking. Plus, I don't really like to go potions in general because I think potions overall are kind of weak outside of a couple of builds. But hey, it helps. Burning Coal in the armor buffed. Cold stacks resisted from 3 to 4. This honestly just feels like a reaction to Cryomancer being really strong, but I will take it. I like Burning Coal. Holy Spear buffed. Mana cost from 22 to 18. That is quite a big mana cost reduction. The biggest problem I've always had with Holy Spear is that it feels weird. Like, it's not good enough to be your main weapon, so it feels like it's meant to be a secondary utility weapon, but for who? And for what class? And what build? Maybe like Pet's Holy Spear? But in all honesty, I feel like Pet's Holy Spear is worse than Pet's Thorn Bloom. You know, something with like a Carrot Goo, Thorn Bloom, the Hedgehogs, etc., etc. I feel like that's just better if we want to go like pet build. Plus, Spear itself kind of sucks past round 7. And so that means you're either not going to play Spear and play a different weapon, your main weapon, or you are going to play Spear, have stamina problems, especially against shields, and that's not good. I like this Box of Prosperity buff, though. Box of Prosperity uniques required to get the cracked gem from 3 to 2. Still not going to make me create Box of Prosperity too much. It's the bag you get from putting a gem box next to the monarchy nickel. Again, I'm still not going to put it next. I'm still not going to create this box too often, but it does make it easier to actually get the gem, so that is nice. Main reason I don't want to create this too often is most of the time I still want to find gems in the shop, so that's basically it. Prismatic Sword, faster by 0.1 second. I like it. My problem with Prismatic Sword is I just feel like other late game items are better. Also kind of has the same problem that Holy Spear has, in that I don't really want to play a wooden sword in the mid game, so I kind of have to just have it in my storage, and I'm kind of floating 2 gold. And then when I do play it to combine it with the Prismatic Orb, I'm most likely going to lose that round because I'm going to honk a lot. So it's a little awkward. A couple of amulet buffs here. Amulet of Alchemy, 10% activation increase for potions, so they're now at 60%. Really like that. Amulet of the Wild, 5% more damage with the spikes, which is pretty solid. Amulet of Steel gives you an extra 5 block. It's whatever. I honestly think Amulet of Steel is kind of the weakest amulet. But sure. I really like Amulet of Alchemy buff. I think it's been doubled now from what it started. I want to say it started at like a 30% potion activation chance when it first came out. Kind of really nice with Potion Bomb, like Scythe, Darksaber, Poison Potions. So I'd like that. Strong Health Potions are healing a little bit more now. That's whatever in my opinion. It's like, okay, sure, 4 extra health. It's not terrible, but it's not crazy. Vampiric Potion, an extra 2 lifesteal, which is solid. I still feel like Vampiric Potion's main problem is that just it's kind of hard to make. Ruby Egg, Ruby Whelp are reflecting an extra debuff, which is kind of out of left field if you ask me. I've never felt like Egg and Whelp were weak. I honestly felt they were really good because Chunk is really good. I guess outside of Reaper, you don't really see Egg and Whelp outside of Reaper too often. Maybe in Pyromancer if they go Obsidian Dragon for some reason, or in a Ranger build that goes Pets, or basically anyone who goes Mana Torch, I guess, maybe. But I guess so, yeah. Outside of Reaper, you don't see this thing too often. And then a Blood Harvester buff and a Villain Sword buff. Both are just 1 gold cheaper, which it's fine. I don't really experiment too much with these kind of unique weapons because 1, I don't think they're good enough. And 2, they're also just, well, they're unique, so they're really rare, and they're hard for me to theorize around because I don't want to theorize around them because they're really rare. And that is it for the neutral items in terms of balance changes. So not a single nerf in terms of neutral items, which I do like. I do prefer patches where there are more buffs than nerfs. But next up, we have the meta juggernaut. We have Pyromancer. What have we got here? Molten Dagger and Molten Spear, damage -1. Kind of funny how we just got a Molten Dagger nerf, damage -1 as well, about a week ago, and we're getting another one. So to them, Molten Dagger is still really good, and in all honesty, it was. Both Molten Dagger and Molten Spear are just so nuts because they just carry Pyromancer till I'd say even round 8, maybe even round 10. So I do like this nerf. I still think they're going to be really good. Mostly because chili pepper is a really good food. And 1, chili pepper is so good. 2 is nuts. Frozen Flame nerf, block bonus from 15 to 12. Kind of a big nerf there, but in all honesty, sometimes you don't even care about that block bonus, but it makes the Cryomancers a little squishier, which is nice. Book of Ice is a little slower. I do like seeing that. I'm not sure how much that'll change stuff, but I do like it. And Frostbite now only has a 50% cold chance instead of a 60% cold chance. However, I feel like they are giving what is a pity buff here, because this is a lot of nerfs to Pyromancer. Chili Goo heals for an extra 2, which, sure. I think Chili Goo's already fine. In all honesty, though, most of the time, I'd rather just have like a chili pepper surrounded by some food than building Chili Goo. But yeah, so like, what is that? 5 nerfs on Pyromancer and 1 buff that, in all honesty, is not even a big buff. And this Chili Goo buff doesn't even change my mind on whether or not I want to build Chili Goo. I still feel like most of the time I would rather just keep the chili pepper and surround it by lots of food. Next up, we got a Berserker here. Spike staffed, damage +2. That's it. Honestly, fine. I do feel like, I know it's kind of crazy to say, I feel like Berserker is a little bit weak, but I don't think they're the weakest class. If you really ask my honest opinion, I'd say they were the 2nd weakest class in the last patch. I personally thought Reaper was the weakest class. Sure, Reaper has some really good builds, but her consistency with games wasn't the greatest. Some games she would have terrible starts and lose before the subclass round. Other times she would have really good starts and actually find the items she needs and crush everyone even until survival rounds. Berserker, on the other hand, though, has felt a little weak. But outside of that, I think Berserker's fine-ish. Could use a couple more buffs, probably. Spike Staff damage +2 is kind of nice. Deerwood Spike Staff is not terrible, so I kind of like this buff. Ranger, though. Only 1 buff as well. Yggdrasil Leaf is healing from 5 to 7. Personally, I thought Ranger was the 2nd best class after Pyromancer in the last patch. I still think they are. Because, well, 1, they didn't get nerfed. Hero Longsword builds still seem pretty solid. So, yeah, I think they're going to be fine. All the Cryo nerfs too, probably like make it so the gap between Pyro and Ranger has closed now. Personally, I still think Pyromancer is going to be better than Ranger, but I think Ranger is still pretty good. And now for my favorite class, Reaper, aka the class I thought who is the weakest class of the last patch. What have they got? Quite a bit here. Seems like it's all buffs. Toad heals from 10 to 12, cooldown from 4.0 to 3.8 seconds. I don't get this. I don't really get this buff. I thought Toad, in my opinion, was already a good item. Sure, it was a little expensive, and Toad by itself didn't do much, in all honesty. It kind of needed stuff built around it, so it was kind of awkward because you didn't really want to buy the Toad because 6 mana to do very little. Maybe them speeding it up by 0.2 seconds is them being like, hey, it can be a mana generator for magic staff stuff. Which, sure, I can get behind that. The heal is interesting. I already kind of thought it healed a lot once it started going, but sure, I'll take it. Staff of Unhealing, mana cost from 6 to 5. This one I really don't get. Staff of Unhealing, in my opinion, was already really good. In the right builds, and like basically heat stacking with struggles. You go Mr. Struggles, Staff of Unhealing, and you stack up heat from things like Oil Lamp, Hollow Fire Lizard, Whelp. So kind of interesting why they're buffing this. I really don't see it. Maybe they're trying to maybe it's meant for the Cauldron Unhealing, but they also don't have a problem with generating mana, so I don't really understand this buff. This next buff I love. Death Scythe. Stamina cost from 1.5 to 1.2. This is actually really big for a couple of reasons. One, 1.5 stamina was a lot of stamina. So bringing it down to 1.2 helps out a couple of builds. Helps out Snake build because now you can go double Scythe and not worry too much about honking. Like, sure, you're probably going to still have stamina issues, but won't be as bad, especially if you play like a Volpertanger and maybe a couple of bananas. Also, really, really helps out Darksaber Scythe Poison Bomb for a couple of reasons. We'll keep talking about it once we read the next few buffs. Demonic Flask and Strong Demonic Flask are also getting buffed. Basically, damage is higher, lifesteal per debuff is also higher for a strong version. So with the Demonic Flask buffs and the Death Scythe buff, That is a huge, and the potion amulet buff too. Those are huge. Amulet of alchemy, I believe. Those are huge buffs to Darksaber's Scythe. Darksaber's Scythe has had a few problems. One, if your opponent doesn't die to the initial burst, they usually beat you. Number two, they didn't have, or they had kind of stamina problems if your opponent didn't die right away, so you were kind of forced to play stamina potions. By lowering the stamina cost for Death Scythe, we can play less stamina generators now, and that means we can buy Demonic Flask now. What does that also mean? Well, Demonic Flask can actually crit, so we can now actually put our Cursed Dagger next to our Darksaber and our Demonic Flask to have the Demonic Flask crit, which means if it's a strong version, that's also lifestealing. Pretty sweet. What's the problem though? And why do I think this build will not be the best build for Reaper? It's the same problem Reaper has with a lot of her builds. Super inconsistent. Darksaber, you need a lightsaber. That's a godly item. You probably want to have around 3 to 4, maybe even 5 poison potions. And you probably want to have them strong. That's a lot of mushrooms. Mushrooms not a good food item. It's also poison potions also kind of expensive. Demonic Flask is also pretty expensive. Scythe is also really, really expensive. You need a lot of space too, because you probably need to get some leather armor or armor in general to activate stone skin potions to have the poison go off right away. So that costs a lot of money. Number two, another problem with this build, I don't know if this is the second problem with this build, your opener and even your mid game is usually very blind heavy. Oil Lamp exists. Mana Torch, Mana Thirst exist. Those are great against blind stuff, so you gotta hope you don't play into those. I know I'm complaining about this, but in all honesty, this is still great buffs for Reaper. Will this make Reaper good? Maybe this will get her to be the 3rd best class. Because it's still not fixing her problem of inconsistency. Her best build, in my opinion, in terms of consistency while also climbing is probably still going to be Bloodthorn. You know, like a Bloodthorn, Chonk, Locklifter, like that old build. That, in my opinion, is still the best Reaper build if you want to climb because it's really consistent, doesn't really need godly items. Technically, Chonk is a godly item, but it's 2 legendaries to create it. Same with Bloodthorn. Bloodthorn, I'm pretty sure, is a godly item, but it needs 2 epics. So, yeah. Maybe next week when they release new items, if they are going to release new items, I believe they said, yeah, new content. Don't know if that means new items, but maybe if there'll maybe a new item for Reaper to help her smooth out her mid-game consistency issues, that can help. But anyway, that is it for the balance patch. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Do you think they nerfed Cryomancer enough? Do you think they didn't nerf her enough? Do you think Ranger or Berserker needed some nerfs and they got away really lucky in this balance patch? What do you think about the Reaper changes? Do you think some of these buffs are bad? Do you think some stuff from Reaper should have been nerfed? I'd love to hear your opinion. I hope you enjoyed the video though. With that all said and done, if you enjoyed the video, I'd love if you could leave a like or a comment down below. Always helps me out. Always helps out the channel. And if you guys want to keep up with the Backpack Battles content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel as well. If you want to watch me play some Backpack Battles, you can go and check me out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zenington, where I stream pretty much every single day. If you also want to talk about Backpack Battles and other stuff, you can join my Discord as well. Always pin comment to that with a link to that down below. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all again once more for watching this video. And until I see you guys in the next one, bye.